evening. Welcome to Conspiracy Cafe. I'm your host, George Freund. As usual, we're with you now. We're with you to the end. We always hope the end will be a long way off. But unfortunately, the New World Order is taking some giant steps forward to push us off the cliff a little bit sooner than they expected. Definitely a little sooner than we expected. That's why you have to come to that channel here in downtown Toronto to have a different change of pace. Probably something that cuts through the muck and puts the wooden stake through the heart of the New World Order. There's so many stories happening, breaking all at once. We could probably just pick one and do an hour show on each of them. And there's probably like 30 or 40 to pick from. Even as we're preparing for the show, things are developing so fast. We have the news. Okay, there we go for my close-up shot. Mystery surrounds 6-story plunge in the Toronto Star today. So this guy was in the apartment, that the guy was in the apartment that got arrested by the police for the murder of the guy in Mayor Ford's photograph, smoking drugs with a crack pipe that he says is in a video that doesn't exist. So this guy takes the Nestea plunge, 6 floors, lives, is sequestered off in a small rural Alberta hospital outside of the limelight, and somebody scoops his iPhone. If that was indeed perhaps maybe the iPhone that took the video that doesn't exist of the mayor with the drug dealer who was in the picture who was murdered by the guy who was in the same room as this guy. I think the mayor is in a pickle. Then CTV News announces after they make massive arrests through the city of Toronto, rounding up all the people at all the addresses that were around where the alleged video wasn't filmed because it doesn't exist. CTV broke a big story to say the police were wiretapping all these people, talking about the video that they took that doesn't exist, weeks before it was a public revelation in the newspapers, citing a confidential source in the police, as I understand it. So that tells us we're getting into an episode of the Goodfellas, or worse. And that the whole structure of government and law enforcement in the city of Toronto is as corrupt as anything you'd find in an Elliot Ness film about the Untouchables. So I have to review all this stuff, look it over, and work on this one for the next week's show because this is, I usually don't get into the sordid municipal politics because it's so picayune, but there may really be something to this that just defies jurisprudence in the history of Canada, never mind Toronto. Then we have the President of France, Francois Hollande, saying that the Euro crisis is over. Just like that. It's gone. Well, isn't that wonderful? And then I just thought, does he have Larry, Curly, and Moe for a backup? Because just as soon as this gets printed, within days, it's going to get turned upside down. So he's attending one of these big conferences in Japan to tell them, how great everything is and everything's going to turn around and we've got it all licked. And then you listen to the business news this morning, Thursday, the 13th of June, 2013, and everything's turned upside down because somebody started a rumor that QE, quantitative easing, is going to cease in the near future. And everybody jumped ship like there was no tomorrow, and it was the biggest downslide in the market since 2011. Just on a rumor. They didn't do it. So everything's still the same. We still have the same shaky foundation like you have in an earthquake. Nothing changed. But just a rumor started the earthquake. What's going to happen when they come through with the promise and end quantitative easing? The whole thing's going to slide into the sewer, period. And we see that the newspapers always tell you things without writing them out in articles. It's so hard for people to catch on about this, but they use the simplest language, the first language devised by cavemen, the pictographic language, to explain all this stuff. And it's on the banner. I guess we go on to this one for the close-up. It's on the banner headline of the National Socialist Post. You see the world up here, and it's going to blow up. stick a dynamite or something in the top, with Europe and Africa up there, talking about debts. And what they're telling you is the world global economy is going to blow up in Europe first. So if you know these things, you're preparing yourself and getting ready because you saw the sign. And that fits in with what Mr. Holland is saying. He's a politician. How do you know a politician's lying? His lips are moving. Always. So then in the meat of this article, it says, when they're talking about this loan package bailout for the Cypriots, that it was worth 10 billion euros. And that they're going to force them to raise 13 billion euros through a tax on large deposits and banking reform. Now, when I went to school, 10 and 13 weren't the same. It's 3 billion euros kind of like in Never Never Land somewhere. I guess that goes into the pockets. Like our federal government, when they put $3.1 billion somewhere without receipts and nobody can find it, you know, not in the garbage, not on the floor. I don't know where it went. We have to be under the control of some of the greatest mafias that have ever existed since the dawn of time, running institutions of government, getting away with it as if they're pious, pied saints, the Friar Tucks of the Robin Hood era. God, we need to change the channel. But some places you can't change the channel. This is one here, Greece. Another part of this austerity package, if we can show the screen there, my friend, we can just show, there's more people in the studio than are here at that channel. But what happened was the Hellenic network was shut down. Everybody's out of work. 2,500 people out the door at midnight. TV's off the air, mid-sentence, mid-word, protesters outside, because part of the deal with the banksters was that they had to cut costs. And one of the places they had to cut costs was with the country's national news media. They had to go. So that's just absolutely Hellenic broadcasting. Just out the door, gone. Because, in this article, announced during the inspection in Athens by officials from Greece's bailout creditors that they had to close ERT, the national radio, television, media stations, and put 2,500 people out of work. Why? Because they're not corporate, so they probably tell you a lot of things that you just don't hear on the corporate media, like Canada CBC will tell you things that you don't hear on corporate media. It's all corporate fascism on the corporate media. So if somebody's got a real story about somebody being bulldozed by something in a free trade zone, in a country where we do illegal mining because we don't follow any safety standards or something like that, and we hire goon security to beat them and shoot them and knock them over, well, that's not going to be on, you know, the corporate media like breakfast television or any of these other cool talk shows in downtown Toronto. They're just not going to tell you. So you can live in the la-la land until they pull the rug out from under your feet and you collapse into a void. But don't worry. You see, I picked up another book, and I got to bring it along for the next show. It's one of those foreign policy things that's this thick, written by, you know, former CIA agent, State Department official, yada yada, PhD at some university somewhere, talking about, you know, just the geopolitics of the world, the New World Order and how it's going to come out. So I just started looking at the introduction, you know, last night. And we got a new player on the field that they're talking about. So basically what we have is we got three power groups vying for the New World Order to be the global government. And they're all fighting amongst each other. We've said that all along. We're the only people who even talk about things like that. So one block is the Russians and the allies they have with the Chinese and some of the former Russian states and Iran and stuff like that. Then the next group is the United States, England, the Anglo-Euro sphere with a lot of the Pacific, Australia, New Zealand, all the former British colonies and all that sort of thing. They're in one big group. And they also include the Vatican now. So you have like the gold, the fascists, and the black, the Vatican, against the red, the commies. They're still commies. That's what he says in there. They're still commies. And they use Al-Qaeda. which is really a CIA invention. So the guy's a professor, but he's missing a couple of little steps. But the other one is the Saudis. They're the other ones vying for world global domination. That little sect in Saudi Arabia. So of course you never hear that on talk radio either. But that's what we're fighting for. You see, we're fighting for, see, who's going to be the Antichrist. And like dogs, you know, nipping at heels, everybody wants to be the lead pack dog in that one. So the Russians, what they're doing, they're going to hold 200 drills in the next 6 months on those missiles that fly across continents and go boom and make a mushroom cloud. First time in a long time. So the Strategic Missile Force, according to Colonel Igor Yegorov, is going to do this. So they have to learn how to overcome the missile defenses of things like what the other group, the Anglo-Euro group, put together and put all those defense systems up against the Russian border. And they're inventing a new missile to replace the Topol Amman-Yars in the near future. I like one of their missiles. It's the SS-18 Satan. He knows how to party. And who else knows how to party in glorious Canada here in Ontario? So this is an international show, so we hate to bore you with you know, some of the things that go on in Ontario, but they are very important because this is our home turf. So one of them is our former Premier, Dalton McGuilty. His real name is McGuinty. We call him McGuilty because he's guilty. He was into some kind of thing in the 2011 election where they canceled power plants that were already contracted and they paid out lots of money. And because they wanted to win a couple of seats and some greenie guys in certain ridings in South Mississauga and Oakville, you know, they didn't want, like, you know, dirty places where like people go to work and, you know, play with tools and things like that. Just throws off the whole neighborhood. So they said, you know, we're not going to vote for you if you build this power plant here. Well, anybody else would have put the power plant there anyway. There was always been power plants there. They used to burn coal when I was a kid. They tore that one down, they got a new one. Burns natural gas. So does virtually every house in that area. They burn natural gas to heat their homes and heat their water. Probably 90% of the homes in the area got natural gas. So if it's in your house, like, what's the big deal? It's like 10 kilometers away near the lake in a power plant. It's way safer than the coal was. And you know what? You use electricity. So they got rid of all the evidence in something called Operation Vapor, because they made it all vaporized. So they deleted all their emails, so there's no evidence anymore that what they did with all the money that they paid and who got it and where it went and who said what. But the Premier had to resign. He resigned and he prorogued Parliament where nobody gets to meet until they select a new Premier. It was out of business for months until they selected our new head honcho who's covering everything up in his place. And now the revelations are so severe that he even had to resign his seat in Parliament, which is, you know, they go out hanging out of the door with 12 cops dragging him. So it's got to be good and it's got to be true because he's resigned twice. So the Conservatives, the opposition party, called in the provincial police to look into this. $585 million at last count, and we can't count the rest because they deleted the emails, just disappeared, taxpayers' money. I've seen it on my hydro bill. I don't have it here, but there's like mission creep. You know, I got to pay more and more and more. They call it the delivery fee or something like that, you know. So now it's like I unplug everything. Right? I used $16 worth of hydro. I got an $87 bill for the delivery charge. What did they bring it in, a pail? Because I got to pay for that $585 million. And I got to pay for the mistake from the last guy. Maurice Strong, the deputy head honcho at the United Nations, when he was in charge of Ontario Hydro. He spent and wasted hundreds of millions, if not billions. So we have to have a debt retirement charge. So it's almost $5 for that. $5, you know, for some other charge, and then I got to pay, like, you know, another $5 for the harmonized sales tax on all top of that. It's just absolutely brutal. But that's how Operation Vapor works. Everything disappears. Then we go back to France, and one of our fans sent us this thing about, you know, what's coming on in France with this new concept of parenthood, where you're never allowed to say mother and father anymore because it's not politically correct, because we're going to have, you know, gay families now, so you have 2 moms, 2 dads, so it's too complicated. So we got a new Orwellian term, parent 1 and parent 2. So that will apply in law to every family, so we don't make anybody look funny. It's like totally Orwellian. Parent 1, parent 2. And then down the road, when parent 1 and parent 2 go to the camp to disappear out the smokestack, well, we can have a new parent 1 and parent 2, or parent 3 and parent 4. Because it doesn't really matter, because you have no mother and you have no father. The state's your mother and father. And some of the things we have here in a little sidebar is, great statements from Vladimir Lenin. Destroy the family, you destroy the country. Sounds like there's a message in there. Then one of the ones about the economy, the surest way to destroy a nation is to debauch its currency. Sounds like quantitative easing. And then one of the other classics, the way to crush the bourgeoisie, that's you and me, is to grind them between the millstones of taxation and inflation. Hey, let's spend another $585 million so we can tax us some more. It's great. We like it. And then one of our other governments here in Canada, the province of Nova Scotia, they nix Mother's and Father's Day because it's, it's just not New World Order, right? So now we're going to use the recognized International Day of the Family of the United Nations because we really are a global government. And we have to have this kind of socialism, and we have to listen to Vladimir Ilyich Lenin and destroy the family. So even when I was a kid, there were kids that didn't have a mother and father. Some were raised by their grandparents. Some only had one or the other. They come from a broken home. Somebody's dead. Well, we all knew that. So you didn't force the kid, to slap him in the head and say, well, you got to do a mother's card even though she's dead. No, we understood that. So there was alternatives. It's just absolutely amazing. Then we have a big news piece, is Syria was marching towards the Golan Heights. And what disturbed me to some degree was this picture in the article, because when you're getting near to the Golan Heights, you're getting near to the fact that we could have some interesting wars coming down the road, and we do nuke Damascus in the Bible, but we have this clock that's very similar to the clock down here in the combined disasters. We've always assumed that one was the clock in Japan, but it is interesting that it bears such a striking resemblance in our Illuminati card game. So is that very significant? Well, it is significant that we're in so much trouble in Syria. 93,000 people at latest count killed, including thousands of children. And it's just a blasted shame that, for some reason, we can't find room for some of these waifs under our roofs, that they have to be in a combat zone. I wouldn't even want to be in that combat zone. Even if I was with 50 good Marines, I wouldn't want to be in that combat zone. Never mind that innocent women and children are left in there, or senior citizens, or people with health problems. And this is an underestimate that there's 93,000 killed. There's probably more, at least 5,000 a month going down the tubes. And then we get back to, our big brother state, and the beheading thing we had in London that's all forgotten now because they got caught. And the brother of one of the beheaders just happens to be an MI6 payee, if not an actual agent. So Jeremiah Adebalajo, 26, attends university teaching English in Saudi Arabia, one of the countries that wants to make jihad with the other two factions to control the world. So he's paid thousands of dollars, according to this Daily Mail article, to work for MI6, travel around, stay in 5-star hotels. This is the school. Paid money to work for MI6. That's his sister, Blessing. Not too concerned her other brother's a beheader, because he was probably working for MI5. So he has traveled all over. So is his brother. They talk about this guy being arrested in 2010 in Kenya, part of a terror group. But they still get to go on planes and go all over the world and all this other stuff. It's just absolutely amazing. But there we go. Right there in corporate media. Our beheader. He is an MI6 man. Then the father of the man shot in Florida has gone public with the death photos of his son. That's head on looking there. So Abdul Baki Tadashev holds a photo of his dead son Ibrahim, and he says in another article in the Toronto Sun where his son was tortured, was shot 6 times in the torso, and then they finished him off with a 7th shot in the top of the head, the coup de grace shot. May 22nd in that Orlando apartment while he was being interviewed by the FBI, where they said he flipped out and made 12 different stories to suit the color of the day. But it appears quite obvious. Like, you shoot somebody 6 times in the torso, I don't think he's getting up too fast to fight you anymore. So it's probably not necessary to give him the headshot, because the only thing he's doing is flopping around on the floor like a chicken with its head cut off. So it would appear this was just an out-and-out murder, hit, whatever you want to call it. In many of the stories, and one of them that's quite detailed is the one innocent until proved dead, they say that the other officers left the room one by one until this FBI agent was with him alone. And they probably were torturing him, playing execution or something like that. And they succeeded, didn't they? So President Obama says all the time that, you know, everything's okay, there's nothing wrong, we don't do these things here. Sounds like, you know, the guy in Get Smart, you know, Siegfried. This is chaos. We don't do these things. Staka! But there is no judicial process. They just blow them away. Our good buddies finished up the Bilderberg group meeting. Nothing was said too much, other than, you know, they're just the kinder, nicer, gentler neo-fascist Nazis like the good old days, heading the Anglo-American portion that wants to dominate and control the world. Our Prime Minister was making speeches alluding to that in the British Parliament as well earlier today. You know, saying that if we don't go ahead with the free trade, this European Union free trade, well, then we put at risk all the civil rights and democracies and freedoms that we have. Well, how the hell can that be? Unless they plan to use the heavy hand upon us soon. And that's pretty much what the Bilderbergs are probably talking about. They're the ultimate parasites on the planet Earth. And then, of course, we have, you know, these guys like Ed Balls, founder of Amazon, chairman of Google, chief executives of BP and Shell, the people who start world wars. All there with the Bilderberg Queen. Half of the population in the United Kingdom is going to get cancer in their lifetime. The projected figure will be up to 47% in the near future. It's getting very close to it now. And then, you know, we know that was the whole reason for Fukushima. Of course, that's fallen so far off the table, nobody even knows what that was anymore, because they just wanted to spread all this radiation all over the place to give us more and more cancer and more and more cancer and more and more cancer. And I lost my article on one of the cures for cancer, so I got to dig that one up. Make sure I bring it with me. It's called Thunder God. It's an herb, very powerful herb. It should usually be used under the control of an herbalist or medical doctor, herbalist, to make sure that it doesn't do any harm to your body. But it takes about 40 days, kills cancer, and it don't come back. And then there's all kinds of weird things happen to your body. You don't even know what they are. You just do what feels right or something like that. But I had a bump on my skin. I don't know, it was some kind of melanoma or whatever, but I know I've killed cancerous melanoma on my mother with frankincense oil. And I dabbed that on, and in a period of 30 days, her cancer was gone. Well, I had this bump on my hand, had it for a while, and I put on pure frankincense oil. And I'll tell you, I had no idea. The sucker just exploded. I get to work, and then I'm going like I pick something up, and there's blood dripping off it. I'm going, what the hell happened? It just exploded. So whatever it is, it just don't look the way it did before, I'll tell you that. But then there was a story in the Book of Myths about the wise men bringing baby Jesus. Gold, frankincense, and myrrh. There's probably something to that. global warming has been debunked. By, of all people, NASA. So practically everything we were told by the corporate mainstream media about this has been a lie. So NASA's Langley Research Center, Al Gore and all the global warming hoaxers are wrong. The Earth is actually cooling. This article, put in Principia Scientific Internationale by Martin Milzak and his colleagues at NASA, tracked the infrared emissions from the Earth's upper atmosphere during a recent solar storm, March 8th to March 10th. The vast majority of energy released from the sun during this immense coronal mass ejection was reflected back into space rather than being deposited into the Earth's lower atmosphere. And overall, there was a cooling effect, which completely contradicts NASA's own climatology division, that greenhouse gases are a cause of global warming. The data collected using the sounding of the atmospheres using a broadband emission radiometry, SABRE, found that both CO2 and nitrous oxide, NO, reflect heating energy rather than absorb it. This is a huge embarrassment to NASA's chief climatologist, Dr. James Hansen, and his team at NASA's GISS. Dr. Hansen, of course, did like what most good slobs do, is he fled the field. He retired from his career as a climatologist at NASA. Absolutely amazing how we are taken advantage of so well. And we fall for it every time. Are we ready for a video when the time comes? We'll do the the Lou tube there, and I'll play that one, I guess, because it's on YouTube on my screen. Is that how it's going to work? Okay. So this is kind of cool. It's a drunk driving campaign where they did this film in a British pub. Can we show the screen for some of the still images? And they show this guy coming through the window, you know, like a body, mannequin body with blood and gore and all this kind of stuff. And guys were just in there standing in front of the loo, and you know, they were just totally mesmerized by this thing. And the reason we picked this up and put this out is because they do that all the time with the news. Never mind. So let's play this puppy again. We found a YouTube version that'll probably work better.
Hello?
Okay, don't drink and drive. Good message. But you just look at how these guys, and they had several different people in there, all thought this was real. They all reacted to that mannequin coming through the window like it was real. So imagine you filled the room with smoke while the marathoners are running through the bathroom and a couple of people take a dive and there's blood all over the place. You'd think it was a terror attack, wouldn't you? It's just so simple to cheat the human mind. And because you speak with authority and you're on TV and you're on the radio, the people are going to believe you. Then another story that we covered that nobody else will even hint at is that the storm chasers may have actually been leading the storm. Well, there was another storm chaser. He died as well. His name was Richard Charles Henderson. He was an amateur. He was killed at the same time, but he did get in contact with a friend of his and sent him the picture of the storm coming at him. And he did show this jumbo twister coming in his general direction. Can we switch to the screen there, my friend? And we'll show our illustration. So this is the chap. He was killed. And this was his quick snapshot of the storm coming on him. And as he sent it to his friend, he's just pretty much saying, like, he's hearing all the stuff beating on his truck, and he knows the end is near, and he dies. This was the path of the storm. So we have to wonder if these people were killed by a storm generated by the shadow government, the secret military-industrial complex. This was an EF5 tornado, 2.5 miles plus wide, and it just grew a mile and something in seconds. And he's got the picture. So the storm chasers, it says in this article that's linked to it, is they were screaming too as they're talking to their people, "We're going to die, we're going to die." The tragic last words of the storm chaser. So can we show the video on the storm chaser? And then you'll see what the military-industrial complex was doing that day. It is chilling.
Hey everybody, Dutch Sense here. 3:25 p.m. Central Time on Wednesday, June 5th, 2013. And I've got you over here on my website, DutchSense.com. I put out a post earlier today about something that fairly interesting that happened yesterday out of Huntsville, Alabama. Now, right off the bat, AlabamaTruth.com is the person that started this dialogue. I want to thank them for putting this out. Yesterday afternoon, a radar pulse appeared relatively low to the ground, and it was seen on National Weather Service radar. Now, it wasn't the National Weather Service radar that was pulsing, it was some other signal that appeared on weather radar as a storm. Multiple people saw it, they reported it to meteorologists who said they were baffled and didn't know what it could be. Okay, here's the circular signature, here's the intensity shown here in a decibel return. Alright, and that's where I kind of came into this, saw this post, and decided to go look up what was actually at the epicenter of the pulse. So, brings you over to my site here, and let's just go through it. Here's the Google Earth shot of the area where the pulse happened, just north of the highway. And there's several interesting buildings that are here at the epicenter. You've got Raytheon, you've got Westar, you've got Decibel Research, which is a radar research company. You've also got the Defense Acquisition University, Northrop Grumman, and BAE Systems, the builder of HARP. Okay, literally, they built the transmitters that power HARP. Now, I put this all together in a post, and you can read about the different companies. So here's Decibel Research. They specialize in, this is from their website, advanced radar signal processing, advanced radar data processing, imaging and image interpretation. Here's their website. Here's a picture of it. They've got the SBX right on the front and center. SBX, Sea-Based X-Band Radar, which is rumored to be part of the HARP program. It's based out of Adak, Alaska, HARP and Gakona. Okay, you have to put two and two together with that they use this for missile defense tracking. Here's the SBX video. You guys can go ahead and watch that. I'll put a link down below for all of this. Also, BAE Systems. Now, if you look at the different things that BAE is involved in, such as HARP, and several other high-frequency transmission type projects, when you see that their building is near the epicenter along with a company that does specific decibel research, radar itself is measured in decibels of Z. That's where they get the name Decibel Research most likely. Also there is Raytheon. Now Raytheon has a missile factory, so I wouldn't think that Raytheon might be directly involved. However, their building is right there at the epicenter as well. Raytheon involved in the LAWS laser weapon system, and of course Northrop Grumman. And they have a specific spot on their site dedicated to directed energy. And you can just come down here, click on it. I provided all the links. So summed up, I put an explanation here. What we are seeing is a transmission of some sort coming from, most likely, Decibel Research. I can't pinpoint it down to which building, but one of those buildings there is emitting a pulse, which is then seen on weather radar. Now, how does that happen? It's an energy interference. Just the same thing that would happen if you have two people talking on the same radio frequency. They're going to interfere with each other. One, if they are more powerful than the other, The same thing can happen on radar with directed energy weapons with different types of radio frequency can show up on radar itself, on weather radar. And there's other examples where cell phone towers have shown up on weather radar. Out of Illinois, for instance, from the National Weather Service saying that the 4G cell phone tower was causing a beam to return on their radar. Okay, that's just one example of many. So, I hope this answers some questions. At least it gives us a spot to look at. Okay, you've got to go look up what's at the center of these pulses. Each time we see a pulse, you go look up the epicenter. Normally, the pulse is coming from a NEXRAD radar, for instance. But when you see a smaller pulse like this, a very intense pulse that returns as a storm, when no storm is actually present, that's what we've been calling ghost storm activity. It's a pulse that shows up as a storm, and there's nothing actually there. It's frequency induced only. Now, the result of that could be real storm activity within a few days. We'll have to watch and see. This is a much smaller pulse. It's not coming from the NEXRAD. It's coming from somewhere else. And so we don't know what the consequence of that pulsing is going to be, if anything. Much love, folks. Hang in there. Always remember to look up what's happening at these different locations. Don't just take the mainstream word for it. They're trying to say now it's fiberglass chaff, and they chaffed the entire area. Okay? There you have it. I mean, of course, they're going to come up with these different explanations that fly in the face of what we're actually seeing happen. All right? Chaff release? I don't think so.
Don't think so. The echo. They lie. They always lie. When they get caught in a lie, they develop a new lie. And the new lie is always better than the old lie, and we fall for it all the time, so it pays for them to lie. But it's getting to be pretty damn obvious what's really going on. Obama orders U.S. to drop overseas target lists for cyber attacks. I thought that's what the Chinese commies did. And here, you know, the just amazing Son of Jesus returned to the planet Earth to lead us to salvation, tells us that he's got a hack list. And they're picking targets. Well, they're spying on us too. What do you expect? And they kill people extrajudiciously. So they got lots of lists. Cyber Command is ready to take on the Chinese hordes. Pilots of 3 passenger planes saw UFOs over Britain's Scientology base. So 3 different aircraft report seeing 2 flat silver discs on final approach. One was just 100 feet from a Boeing 777. So one of the things Scientology believes in is they believe certain people are actually inhabited by aliens, which makes for good sci-fi movies, but you never know. Maybe that's why we have some of the problems we have, is our leaders aren't Homo sapiens. They're invaders from someplace else. Hey, that was a great TV show from many years gone back. Then we have a good news story. Hugh near the control there to show our little puppy dog here. This dog's name is Pui. In Bangkok, he was going by a garbage dump and he heard a baby, a little premature one over there. Was tossed in the garbage by someone who didn't want it, obviously, and he picked it up and he took it home. And dropped it at the door. Wanted to drop it, placed it gently at the door. And here's just like one of those, super beautiful dogs that saves a human being. So the daughter of the man at the home, Sundaret, opened the bag, found the baby. It was taken to the hospital, saved. The dog got a medal. The owner got $200. And they said that Pui never brought anything home before. There is a fine animal. Heard another story from one of the ladies at work, and she was telling me about another dog when I talked to her about this story, which she thought was in the Philippines. It's a motorcycle bearing down the street on a couple of kids. They don't know it's coming. They're going to get run over. And the dog charges the motorcycle, puts its face under the front wheels, forces the motorcycle to careen out of the way, out of the children. His face was horribly disfigured. And then some decent souls took it to the United States, where the dog was reconstructed by veterinary specialists in a series of like 8 months of operations to put its head back together. If there were people like that on the planet Earth a little more, we wouldn't be in half the trouble we're in. Maybe aliens don't get into dogs too often. So the United Nations Arms Treaty has gone ahead. It's up in the air whether the Americans will sign it. I'm sure Obama's just foaming at the mouth with the pen just to ink that puppy on. Maybe that's the reason for one of the latest school shootings. Maybe there are broader reasons for it. But we have to vilify the word gun and guns, and the people who own them, because Vladimir Ilyich Lenin said so. And we must do what Vladimir Ilyich Lenin says. A system of licensing and registration is the perfect device to deny gun ownership to the bourgeoisie. That's me and you. Only an armed people can be the real bulwark of popular liberty. That's true. Chairman Mao said it, that, power grows out of the barrel of a gun. When they're taking the guns away from the people, they're taking away your power. They're going to give the power to the police and the military. That doesn't mean too much to you right at this moment. But in time, as Operation Prism sinks in, as the city shutdown lockdowns expand, and we round you up for the final solution, eh? It's going to make a lot of sense. 11-year-old suspended from school because he said the word gun. And it's just amazing how people freak over the saying of a harmless word. If he picked the gun up and he shot somebody with it, well, there's a cause for reaction. But he just said the word gun. The gun can be most often used benignly. Sport shooting, hunting, collecting, defense of liberty, defense of country, defense of community. Rarely in crime. But we have to just focus on the crime and forget about the rest, because we're changing the power structure of the planet Earth. Florida sheriff arrested by the governor. Liberty County, Florida Sheriff Nick Finch, arrested by Governor Rick Scott for standing in the defense of the Constitution and honoring his oath of office in regards to the Second Amendment. In time, they will just be executed summarily. 6 shots to the torso, 1 in the head for the coup de grace. Get used to it. You dropped the ball. You gave away your rights and your freedoms. You fell for terror. I was watching this video on Hitler's bodyguards about the rise of the Third Reich and how they used all these fake terror events to empower Hitler, to scare the people, to scare the Reichstag into voting for laws that gave Hitler and Hitler more power until he was the unsurpassed dictator. And they were all lies. And we make the same mistake today. Conservative government's going to snub the UN Arms Treaty here in Canada. Well, that buys them some votes. Now, the trouble is that this treaty exists. The next government that comes along may very well sign it. So the fact that they snub it now means nothing. It's just a diversion to take your mind off things and allow the New World Order to work at it from another angle. They play two sides of the fence. So it really means nothing, because it can be changed in a heartbeat. You see, if your rights come from God and they're inviolate, nothing can change. But when your rights come from man, the next man comes along and can change it. And then one really bizarre thing, U.S. actor Steven Seagal goes to Moscow to be the face on some weapons industry thing. So we all know he's a sheriff in the United States. He got appointed, by our big popular constitutional sheriff. So you got to wonder if he's there in a, intelligence gathering capacity for the other side in the up and coming Civil War, the constitutionalists. And he's feeling out the riskies for what kind of help we can expect when it starts against the Obama fascists. And then, of course, like we said, we had a school shooting. was timely. As soon as you find out Obama was like, a mile and a half, 2 miles away from the scene, you just go, well, maybe he wanted to whack off on something while he was in the neighborhood. Get that satanic power up and close. Because he was in, some doo-doo again. Scandal after scandal after scandal. And you got to have something come in the news to change the channel. So we make a tornado in one state, we have a school shooting here. Nobody's going to talk about Benghazi, SEAL Team 6, a lot of the other issues where his butt's on the fire, now the spying issue. So we have to wonder, was the shooter one of those Manchurians used by the state to suck us in to a police state, to suck us into gun control, the living embodiment of the Reichstag fire times 5,000 more, because we fall for it every time. Some of the bizarre things about the shooting at Santa Monica College is he was shooting up a place where they have one of these global-only schools called Citizens of the World School. So that really strikes it as unusual. He was very calm. He's standing there just like he's waiting for the bus. Well, he was waiting for the bus to fill it full of holes. Wearing his SWAT-like fatigues and riot helmet so that he actually looked and was actually assumed to be a cop from many of the people witnessing him. Or maybe he was, because there were allegations of a second shooter. So they tried to figure out a motive for this shooting that happened at 11:50 a.m. Friday. He killed his father and his brother. His father is Amir Zawahiri, 55. I think his brother's name was Charles. Were shot and killed in their home. He lived with his mother. They were separated. The woman who was hijacked at first thought the guy might be a Secret Service agent because the president was in town. So he looked so much like law enforcement, everybody was mistaking him for a cop. Even one of the people who saw the body on the street thought they shot a cop. But he wanted to go to the school. He hijacked a woman, forced her to take him there, shot at people on the way. A terrible, terrible state of affairs. One of the victims was the groundskeeper at the school, this chap here, Carlos Navarro Franco, with his daughter, Marcela. She passed away as well. So you see, a beautiful family, and just totally ruined by another one of these events. And you got to wonder what kind of mad dog would shoot down a beautiful young lady like that. Well, probably police and soldiers. And this is his body lying on the street. He was allegedly shot in the library by campus police, and they dragged him out on the street while he was still alive, and he expired there. But, like a lot of things, not the biggest blood trail there either. A little bit here by his boots, and he had all these extra things with bullets. They said he was carrying 1,300 bullets. That weighs a lot. He had a rifle, an extra receiver, a pistol. Well, these guys should be Schwarzenegger. But the funny thing about it is the guy's unemployed. Not just that he's unemployed, he's unemployable because he's quite off. Said he recently shaved and grew a beard. And then we got to look at, like you do the math. That's how I always used to figure out who the thieves were when I worked at the armored car company. We all make the same money. How come you drive a Ferrari and I got a shitbox? It's not hard to figure out. You get a calculator, you make so much a year, how much does this cost, how much does that cost? That's impossible. Especially when you're only part-time doing it after school. So how did he pay for all this stuff? He gets like a brand new state-of-the-art AR-15 and an extra receiver. So what are we looking at there, especially since the prices went up after Sandy Hook? $5,000? And it's illegal to buy those in California. California has tight gun control laws. He had something like 30 or 40 magazines that went with this gun. Well, they're probably going for 50, 60 bucks a pop. And 1,300 rounds of ammunition, you got to pay for your eye teeth to get that too nowadays because the price tripled. They're offering Canadian dealers double and triple the value of these rounds to sell them in the United States. Guys won't do it. because of the paperwork. It's got to be an awesome bunch of paperwork. So he set fire to the family home. You can scroll through some of the shots here, and everybody knows what I look like. Shot this car, bullet holes in it. This lady's helping the victim inside the car. There's the cops, standing by while this guy's lying dead on the street. Everybody's, having a grand old time there, having coffee. Firemen trying to help this lady. And there's a guy arrested, one of those second suspects. He was released. He was never named. He had nothing to do with it, but so they say. And then everybody gets to practice going around being John Rambo. So that makes you feel good. There's one guy here that just kills me. Well, maybe he would if he had half a chance to get out to bring out the armor, get everybody used to it. So everybody's a suspect. Everybody's got to go around with their hands in the air. But I call this guy Mr. Happy. Just look at that smile. Like, he's happier than that, House of Representatives guy, Charlie Wilson, in Charlie Wilson's War, the movie. Remember, he's in the hot tub with all the bimbos, and then he sees the news, and when he sees the news, then he realizes, there's something going on and whatever. You just can't get that smile off the guy's face. This guy, Mr. Happy, you can't get the smile off his face. He's in love, man. And that's dangerous. That's probably more dangerous than some of these killers. So there were 9 crime scenes in 11 different law enforcement agencies. Sounds like another 9/11. So an eyewitness told ABC 7 cameraman Sean McCarthy that there was indeed a second gunman who opened fire a few blocks to the east of the school's south campus. The witness, a man dressed in black, emerged from a vehicle and started shooting indiscriminately. George Saldana, 47, a custodian at Santa Monica College, witnessed the gunman dressed in military-style apparel shoot an elderly woman point blank. California Highway Patrol also talked about second shooters. Sergeant Denise Jocelyn talked about one suspect, there may be others. And then one individual believed to be the gunman has been shot and has been transported by emergency services to a hospital, confirmed Santa Monica police. So we have multiple references to this second shooter. They say the guy was a whacking nutcase, John Zahari. So he was involved in an incident at school in 2006. They said he was looking on the internet at assault weapons. Okay, so what? Now that's a new mental disorder. You looked at the internet at a gun, so it has to be something seriously wrong with you now. Then he took another student home and started saying that he had a list of people to hurt. And then as we go on, there was a retired Santa Monica police officer who said it was much more than that. He was making explosives, and he had bomb-making materials in his place. So then he was sent to UCLA psychiatric ward, and they released him within a short period of time, saying he's okay. So he shouldn't have been able to lawfully get a gun in California for 5 years, so that takes it to like 2011. And he must have been on a few lists for being, a little bit off his rocker. So I doubt that he could get anything legal or whatever. This is a picture of some of his magazines, the other receiver, and a big revolver he's got. He's got a copy of a Civil War revolver here on the table. Looks like a Remington of the era, and maybe that's how he was able to get that, because that's not really classified as a big, hard and fast gun under many laws. Still one big-ass pistol to carry around. And it's percussion cap, so you don't reload it too fast. So actually that kind of slow you down if you got the AR-15. In this picture, at least they're getting better. We see a video of him walking through the door to go into the library. So since his time in high school, he's supposed to have been like a walking wingnut. There's his picture now, and from his high school yearbook. A lot of people had long hair in their high school yearbook, including me. And then he shot this young lass here Deborah Fine. And again, you just have to really wonder, what the hell's the matter with you? Well, one of the things that's the matter with him is, of course, it's talked about, but it's not talked about in great detail, is the fact that he came from a broken home. The family divorced. Next to death of your parents, the worst thing that happens to you as a child is your parents' divorce. That's what. The big thing is wrong. And it just totally screws up the individual, sometimes forever. His dad was no great guy either. He's supposed to have pulled a knife on them, slapped them around a little bit, and such like that. But you see, I don't know, I've been a firm believer is because I was raised different. Like, you just can't imagine how much different things are now from when I was a child. See, when I went to school, even here in the great, Vladimir Ilyich Lenin homeland of Toronto, he said the Lord's Prayer. We're living in a world now where that just doesn't happen anymore. There's no spiritual compass to guide people. So you used to say things like, Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done, in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we will forgive them that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever. So we learn a little bit about forgiveness. Or we don't do that anymore. So now we build up hate and rage. We give them drugs. We send them to psychiatrists. And they get angry. And they want to get revenge. And they get a shotgun or an AR-15 and they go back to school and they kill all them sons of a bitches. Because we can't say the Lord's Prayer. So then we rewrote the Lord's Prayer to the one for the secular state now. Secular state, which is all over. Hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom has come. Thy will must be done, without any reference to heaven. Give us this day our GM bread, and make us pay for your trespasses, as we foam rage that trespass against us. And lead us not into liberty, but deliver us to evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, until the Lord returns. We have to edit that part out because you wouldn't be allowed to say that in a secular prayer. We're not going to have time to really get into the prism thing. We'll do that next. But we'll just show you how the world's changed. When I was a kid, this was on TV, the Beverly Hillbillies. Now, I just sent that around to people, say, what's wrong with this picture? A couple people answered back. But, Jed's got a shotgun, Jethro's got a rifle, Grandma's got a handgun. And Ellie Mae just looks like, don't screw with me, boy. And then you see them on their truck, their old jalopy going around, and, there's a whole bunch of things wrong with that picture, too. So I made a little list. First thing wrong is their traditional nuclear family. They have firearms. Granny has a handgun. They support the Second Amendment. They grow their own food. They hunt. Their vehicle produces old-fashioned greenhouse gases. They have open liquor. There are no seat belts. There are no airbags. There are no microchips in the vehicle. All the old hay burners were collected and destroyed in the United States some time ago. Their clothes were not made in China. They were self-taught. They stand up for what is right. They are totally politically incorrect. That was all politically correct in my youth. Everything has been turned upside down in 2 generations. With PRISM, we'll just make a quick note, just to get your appetite whet for the next show next week, Tuesday. We collect all this data, and once it's collected, it's collected. And just like 2 generations ago, everything in that picture was politically correct, and I even walked down the street of some small towns carrying my rifle to go target shooting with my buddies. Not a wink or a nod. Now I'd be shot to death. That could change 2 generations from now. Everything that they've collected, we could have a democratic election in the United States 2 generations from now. And a man will be elected. He will bring in Sharia law. He will run as the Ayatollah president. When he gets elected, he will change everything upside down. You see, there are certain crimes that have been committed 2 generations previously. We legalized homosexual marriage. The Quran calls for the beheading of the homosexuals. We allowed women to have rights to use the law against their husbands. that's a violation of the coming law. They'll be beheaded too. And we don't have to worry about finding them all because we have this data set that was so wonderfully set aside by President Bush and maintained by President Obama. This time, no one will escape. We will kill them all in the name of Allah. And that could happen in just 2 short generations from now, because that information should be private. It can always be used against you and twisted into something else later by the Ayatollah president or whatever else comes along. And I'll bet you the Ayatollah president might not like them Jews too much either. But we have the database now. Everyone's connected to everyone. No one will ever escape the future. You can escape now. You can change the channel. You can change the channel to that channel. You can come to Conspiracy Cafe. You can come to my little show with George Freund as your host. And we can turn the world back upside down right this time and that time next week, Tuesday. Thanks for coming out.